All right, let's get started. Thanks for tuning in to our weekly biohack workshop where we're going to be covering the 3 theories of aging, or as I like to call them, the 3 theories of aging and disease. Now, in order to be respectful of everyone's time, please save your questions for the person who invited you. I'll spend the first part of this covering the science behind biohacking. And since a few of you have asked me about starting your own biohack enterprises, I'll spend a few minutes at the end covering that for you. Now, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Marco Rodriguez, my beautiful wife, Diane, who is on tonight as well. She and I have a private practice, and we've been in practice now for nearly 10 years. And, I say this every week that we are blessed with a great team. We've been able to build one of the largest outpatient clinics of its kind in the country. With that comes its pros and cons. And one of the pros is that we get to do extremely rewarding work. We love making a difference in people's lives. One of our mottos is transforming lives, renewing minds, just simply because that it is that rewarding. But it also has its cons, and I want to just cover that with you for a minute. One of the cons is that because of the size of our clinic, we're on the radar, so to speak. So we get approached by companies almost on a regular basis, by vendors and other companies that want to ask us to promote their product line. And generally I will do my due diligence. I'll do my research, and most of the time I find that a lot of these companies and these products are just what I call me too products. They're products just like everyone else's, and they lack the credibility, scientific backing. So this happened with us for a few years, and I became somewhat skeptical of all of these natural products. And I don't know, maybe some of you can relate with that. And that's probably why I wouldn't look at the LifeVantage opportunity for nearly 3 years, just simply because I thought it was just like all the other products out there that overpromise and underdeliver. But I'm very grateful to my good friend Patsy Caulfield, who never gave up on us. And after about 3 years, I finally agreed. I get that. It took me 3 years, but I finally agreed to sit down and take a serious look at what all the fuss was about. What I learned that day literally shook me to my core. I learned that there was institutions from all over the world like LSU, Johns Hopkins, MD Anderson, Harvard Medical School, and many others who were studying a pathway in our cells called NRF2. We're going to be talking about that quite a bit today. They were studying NRF2 against things like cancer, multiple sclerosis, disease, and many other diseases. Now, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into those specifics here, that this is really not the purpose of this. And I want to say that everything that we talk about today, even if there's any mention of disease, under no circumstances are we claiming that our products are here to treat, cure, or mitigate disease. It's really more for comparison purposes. Okay, but I want to encourage you to get back with the person who invited you and take a closer look. Ask a ton of questions as to how this could help you or how this could help a loved one, because that's what I did. I probably drove Patsy and Carrie Williams crazy with all of my questions. And the more questions I asked, the more intrigued I became. There was, it was really significant for me because, look, during that, in full disclosure, during that 3 years when I wouldn't look at the product, my father passed away of a very, very nasty disease. And based on the research that I have been able to look up, I am convinced that had I known about this, this would have made a significant difference in his life. Maybe not necessarily cured him, I'm not saying that, but this certainly would have, I believe, this would have helped him have a better quality of life. So I live with that every single day. But when I saw this, I remember thinking to myself, it's too late for me to do anything to help my father, but it's not too late for me to do something about, to maybe, just maybe, help my son, Seth. So I want to share with you a little bit about Seth. Let me see if I can find the slides here. And I want to go into a little bit of our story, and hopefully it'll make sense to you. All right, let's see here. Well, hold on. Share here. All right, you guys see the slides? Everybody good? You see my slides? And here we go. All right. Here are the slides. Okay, before I introduce you to Seth, let me just introduce you to a couple of my family members. This is my beautiful wife, Diane. Again, she's on tonight. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to her. And, she'll be able to answer questions for you. And then also, let's do this. Let's make sure everybody's muted. Hold on. I want to make sure everyone's muted because, what's that? I got him. All right, here we go. Yeah, let's see here. So everybody still sees the slides from the beginning. All right, so this is my beautiful wife, Diane. She and I are both, again, occupational therapists. And this is our daughter, Kayla. This is one of our grandchildren, Destiny. My daughter, Alex. My son, Mark. Patrick. Donovan. And then this little guy right here is Seth. Now, he's a big part. He's the littlest guy, but he's the biggest part of this story. So this is Seth. When Seth was born, there was no real issues with him. He was a typical kid, very rambunctious. If you can tell from the right of the screen, loved to work out, just very, very active, very funny. But when he was 7 years old, he was at a summer camp and he sustained a closed head injury. So we did everything we could. Again, Diane and I are therapists. We work with pediatrics and we work with children with ADHD, autism, head injuries, and all types of other neuroatypicalities. So we knew what to do with him. So we worked with him and he did survive, thank God. But for the next 8 years, Seth was in special education. He had a lot of speech issues as well as some coordination issues. So my thought was, if this can do what I've learned through the research, if this can do what they say it can do, maybe it would help Seth. So I started biohacking with Seth. Now I didn't tell him what we were going to do with him and how this was going to help him because I didn't want to, I wanted to guard against the placebo effect. So this is what happens to him. So he starts biohacking, and these are his grades beforehand. He was doing okay, but again, this was with special education. That means that he had modifications, accommodations. I had all the cell numbers of all the teachers. I mean, I was in there on a regular basis, almost on a daily basis. So he starts biohacking. A few weeks later, this is about maybe 8 weeks later, his grades start to come up. I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe this is okay, this is good, but I wasn't quite sure if this was, why it was. Maybe I thought it was a coincidence. 16 weeks later, look at this kid. He's making straight A's, of course, with the exception of a B in Spanish, which I think is hilarious because our last name is Rodriguez. But he starts crushing it. I started asking him about, hey, do you need help with your homework? Because I used to have to help him every single night. No, Dad, I'm good. No, Dad, I'm good. I'm like, okay, the kid's good. And he's got good grades. Everything's great. He eventually tested out of special education, and he is now getting advanced placement, getting college credit. So this was able to do for him in a matter of 16 weeks what 8 years of therapy couldn't do. So I got pretty excited about it. Now, what do you do when you're excited about something? You tell people about it. So I come into the office and I'm talking it up. I'm telling everybody, Seth is out of special ed. He's doing great. And so I get approached by Anna Cox. Anna Cox is one of our employees. She was our marketing director, kind of our client services director, but we had taken her out of that position and put her in the office helping out with billing because she was having a lot of issues with inflammation or a lot of pain in her joints, a lot of stiffness. She was using a walker. She needed a shower chair, and they had already ordered her wheelchair because they estimated that in the next 6 months, she was going to basically be incapable of walking on her own. So she says to me, Marco, I don't know if this would help me or not. I said, I don't either. She goes, but I've got nothing to lose. So she starts biohacking. A few weeks later, actually it was about maybe 6 weeks later or so, she comes in, no walker. Hey, Anna, where's your walker? She says, I think it's in the garage. I haven't really needed it for several days. A few months later, 5 months later, we went to Puerto Vallarta with Patsy and we brought her with us, and she hikes 3 miles over a hill, kind of a small mountain, to go swimming with the sea lions because that was one of the excursions. Now think about that. In 5 months, she went from being a person who was in a walker, had already ordered her wheelchair, to now she's hiking on her own, no walker, 3 miles to go swimming with the sea lions. I'm not sure I would do that. So we started telling more people about it. Why? Because that's what we do, right? That's what humans do. We talk about the things that we're excited about. So I started talking to Lori Miranda. Lori Miranda works for us as well. Now, her son was diagnosed. He's a patient of ours, and he's got a lot of different sensory processing type issues. He was virtually nonverbal. He would engage, not engage, but he would respond, but there was no engagement, and he certainly wasn't using any kind of sophisticated language. Again, several weeks go by. He walks into the clinic, engaging in full, complete, and descriptive conversations. even talking about what he wants to do when he grows up. So again, he's now not only engaging in conversation, talking about his day, but now he's thinking about the future. So even a hardened skeptic like myself had to come to terms with the fact that there was something here. Now, I don't have time to share all of the stories that I experienced in between that time, because obviously I shared it with a lot of other people. But I got to the point where I thought, okay, there's got to be something to this whole biohacking and oxidate and nutrigenomics thing. So let me go into a little bit about what biohacking is and what nutrigenomics is. So biohacking, quite simply, is a term that's used within the science of nutrigenomics. Now, the science of nutrigenomics, all it is how you take natural compounds and how those natural compounds affect your body all the way down to your genetic expression. And I'm going to explain that for just a minute. So the human genome was mapped out in the year 2000, and we now know that you have approximately 20,000 genes in your body. About 10% of those genes are set. In other words, science hasn't figured out how to affect those genes. But that means that the other 90% of your genes can be affected. Now, I want you to understand that 90% of your genes can be affected, either upregulated or downregulated, sort of like a dimmer switch. I'm going to give you an example. Our bodies have an inflammatory gene. That's just part of who we are. And those inflammatory genes are very important. If you roll your ankle, what happens to that ankle? Yeah, it swells up. That's the inflammatory process. So it's something that is necessary to protect that ankle from further injury. The problem is that those inflammatory genes are turned on now because of the pollution in the air, the polluted food that we eat, and all of the non-food. I'm talking about preservatives, chemicals that is in our food, all of this artificial food. It literally turns on, triggers those inflammatory genes, what we call chronically. And that's led to all kinds of different health issues. Well, doesn't it make sense? Well, here's a good example, milk. Some people are really allergic to milk. When you drink milk, it makes your nasal cavities get all congested. Well, that's a food triggering the inflammatory response. So doesn't it make sense that if you can put something in your body to trigger that inflammatory response, that there should be something you put in your body to turn that inflammatory response off? And possibly that there's something you can put in your body to turn on the good genes, the survivor genes? Well, that's what the science of nutrigenomics is all about. Now, people ask, is this science of nutrigenomics, is it relatively new? Well, genetics has been around for thousands of years, but really within the last 20 years has really the science of genetics really come into its own. And the science of nutrigenomics has really come into its own around the year 2000, 2003, when there were some discoveries that were made by a gentleman by the name of Dr. Joe McCord. Now, Dr. McCord is a world-renowned biochemist. He is a 4-time Nobel Prize nominee. He also won the Elliott Crescent Award, which is people who've won it, been like Henry Ford, Alexander Graham Bell, Madame Curie. So this guy is a big deal. And so in the early 2000s, he made some discoveries that really rocked the medical community, but it also caught the attention of the news media, in particularly John Quinones from ABC Primetime. Now, John Quinones is an award-winning reporter, investigative reporter. In other words, if he comes into your place of business, that's not good news. He's there because he's investigating something. He's there to try to tear apart whatever claims you're making. So John Quinones shows up at Dr. McCord's office, and he puts Dr. McCord's findings to the test. He takes those results and he publishes that, or he airs them on ABC Primetime. It was the lead story that evening on ABC Primetime. So I'm going to share with you the entire interview is about 15 minutes long, but I'm going to show you just a 3-minute clip of it, okay? So as you watch this video, think two things. Number one, if this is true, how could this help you and your loved ones? And for those of you who are interested in your own biohack enterprise, think about this. If this is true, how can you capitalize on this in this new connected economy?
You want to get an edge on turning back the clock? Who doesn't? Well, it's no longer science fiction, but science possibility, a potential breakthrough. It may not look like the fountain of youth, But inside this nondescript building, I'm about to become part of an exciting experiment. For me, it begins with a blood test. It wouldn't be the first time I've given blood for this company. They want to check my levels of something called T-bars, which is a rough indicator of a person's actual age. T-bars can identify a condition known as oxidative stress, a kind of measure of the wear and tear on our bodies. Oxidative stress, like the rusting of an engine, is not a good thing. The problem of aging begins with the very food we eat to give us energy. As our cells burn that food, they also release toxic chemicals. Those chemicals, you may know them as free radicals, react with all the components of our cells, literally bombarding them millions of times per second, damaging all our cells. The result? Oxidative stress. And we all have it. The body fights back with a system of defenses. It makes two antioxidant enzymes, catalase and SOD, whose job is to gobble up the free radicals before they can harm our cells. So, doctor, how often do I take these? And so, here I go. With that swallow, I've just become part of a potentially landmark scientific experiment. It's called Protandim, and tests have already shown that it revs up the manufacture of those good enzymes in our bodies. More enzymes, fewer free radicals to harm us. Normally, oxidative stress, measured by those T-bars, increases with age, but taking just one pill of Protandim a day reversed that trend for everyone at every age, even for an 80-year-old. So just what's in this seemingly incredible pill? Well, actually, its roots are very humble. Protandim is a combination of 5 plant ingredients. Some you may know: green tea or turmeric, a spice used in Indian cooking. Others, Withania somnifera and Silybum marianum, are more exotic. High oxidative stress is associated with more than aging. It's been linked to hundreds of illnesses. It's at the very center of many diseases: liver disease, diabetes, emphysema, asthma, all of these, strokes, heart attacks, even mental disease. Yes, depression, Alzheimer's disease, depression. But what about my progress? After nearly 2 weeks now, it's time to get my results. The result? My level of oxidative stress has declined dramatically. Just look at where I fall on the graph, before and after. Have we turned back the clock? Maybe not on the outside, but deep inside within my cells. Yes, indeed. We do know that oxidative stress is part of those disease processes. I don't want to wait until I'm 80 years old to find out that I should have taken it. The company that makes Protandim says its tests show the pill, made from ingredients used for centuries, is absolutely safe. For more, go to our website at abcnews.com.
All right. Again, that video, I've probably watched it over 500 times, and every time I watch it, it still is amazing to me. So when that video first aired back in 2005, LifeVantage was a small biotech company. They are publicly traded on NASDAQ. And it was doing a couple $100,000 in volume, not really anything to speak of, because it really wasn't, the intention wasn't to create this global giant that has become now. It was just a group of scientists doing their research, hoping to find, wanted to find discoveries that would help people with their health. Well, after that ABC primetime aired, within the next week, they received over $5 million worth of orders. Now, you would think that that's a hallelujah moment, but the problem was that, again, they were a bunch of scientists. They didn't really have the manufacturing to keep up with the orders. They didn't have a distribution network like they do now. And so everything got back ordered for about 8 months. Now, imagine being someone who saw the entire report, like myself, and thinking, wow, I want to get this into my body, into Seth's body, you know, back when my dad was alive, and then being told, sorry, everything's on back order for 8 months. It was sort of a disaster. But here's the good news, is that universities from all around the world saw that John Quinones's oxidative stress levels came down by 45% in 13 days. So that prompted a lot of these universities to contact the lab and say, hey, we want to study Protandim as it relates to whatever area of study that we're focused on. So, for example, LSU, in conjunction with the Skin Cancer Foundation, found that Protandim reduces the proliferation of skin melanoma by 57%. In their study, they actually outlined how Protandim suppresses tumors. John Hopkins did a very similar study on lung cancer. The American Heart Association. Now think about that. When has the American Heart Association ever really spent any time or significant amount of resources to study a natural product? Well, they published a 27-page article in Circulation magazine on its effects on cardiac health. And the results were so remarkable that they funded another study with Ohio State University on its effects on bypass surgeries. You have Harvard Medical School, Texas Tech. There was articles in Free Radical Biology and Medicine about protandem, Journal of Cellular Biochemistry, Oxidative Medicine, and I mean, just on and on and on. Now, in that video, they mentioned the term oxidative stress. And here's, most people, when I talk to them, they don't really know what oxidative stress is. They're thinking that they're stressed out because of work or because of the whole situation right now with the pandemic. Well, no, oxidative stress is a little bit different than that. And if you go into PubMed.gov, which is our National Library of Medicine, now, this is where we do our research. Please understand that you're a physician and you're a therapist, people like myself, healthcare professionals. We don't go to Google for our medical advice or for our medical research. Maybe if we want to find a good restaurant, but if we want to look up legitimate, peer-reviewed, gold standard research, it's in our National Library of Medicine. And if you do a search for oxidative stress, what you're going to find is that there are over 212,000 studies. It's actually more than that because I took this picture probably a couple months ago. So now we know that oxidative stress has been linked to well over 200 different diseases. So what exactly is this oxidative stress anyways? Well, if you look at an apple and you let the apple sit out for a while, what happens to the apple eventually, right? It turns brown, it decays, it oxidizes. Well, it's the same process that if you take a piece of iron and you let it sit out in the outside and it gets wet and the air hits it, eventually what happens to that piece of iron? It starts to rust, it starts to oxidize. It's the same process that's happening inside of your cells. Really, you could say that you're rusting from the inside out. And where does it come from? Well, it comes from the food you eat, the air you breathe, from cell phone, radiation, and so forth. And again, we now know that it's been linked to over 200 different diseases. So what are your options? Well, Protandim developed an NRF2 activator. NRF2, you're going to want to remember that. NRF2 is a pathway that exists inside of your cells. It's particularly inside of your endoplasmic reticulum. And our product boosts and activates that NRF2 pathway. And because of that, it triggers over 300 enzymes in every cell of your body, reducing your oxidative stress by 40% in 30 days and up to 70% in 120 days. Now, I want you to think about that. In 30 days, this product is able to reduce a lifetime of oxidative stress by 40% in 30 days and up to 70% in 120 days. So people ask me all the time, so what's so magical about this product? And it really isn't magic at all. It's actually just science. It's 5 ingredients. A lot of these I was already taking. Some of these you're probably familiar with: ashwagandha, bacopa, green tea, silymarin, which is like milk thistle, and curcumin. And you can get all of those products at any local nutrition store. But here's the magic, if you will. Dr. McCord spent decades looking at not only the ingredients, but also the right dosages. So it's almost like if you're baking a cake, you got to have the right recipe. You don't just put a bunch of oil and water and flour. You got to have the right amounts. Well, that's what he spent decades studying. And his formula now, which is triple patented, by the way, now has been proven to be 18 times more powerful than simply taking all of these products individually. All right, 18 times more powerful. Washington State University, they studied the NRF2 pathway, that same pathway. And here's what they said, that NRF2 may well become the most extraordinary therapeutic and most extraordinary preventative breakthrough in the history of medicine. Now, I want you to compare that. Think about that for a minute. Compared to MRIs, CAT scans, the cure for polio, penicillin, and with all of these great discoveries, Washington State University says that the discovery of the NRF2 pathway and activating it may well become the most extraordinary therapeutic and most extraordinary preventative breakthrough in the history of medicine. Now, some of you might be wondering why I put this sensor down here. Well, I have certain restrictions based on FDA guidelines, so I can't really put the different types of diseases that Washington State University studied this NRF2 pathway. But I encourage you to do your research. Do like I did. I drove Patsy and Carrie nuts asking them questions and doing my research. Go and figure out what these guys are actually talking about and why is it that they don't want you to know about this. Okay, so that covered the first theory of aging, which was oxidative stress. The second theory of aging is the theory of mitochondrial dysfunction. Now, what in the world is that? Well, if you remember from junior high school biology, the mitochondria exists inside of your cells. Now, we call it the powerhouse of the cell. And here's some facts about your mitochondria, because I want you to understand how important it is. The average person has 10 million billion mitochondria. It's about 10% of your total body weight, and it powerhouses 97% of the energy in your body. It also is involved in removing free radicals, also monitoring healthy cells, eliminating unhealthy cells. That's the problem with a lot of diseases, things like cancer, where your body's not getting rid of those unhealthy cells, and so the DNA mutates, and that's what a lot of times what causes a mutation in those cells. While it also helps with the proliferation, which is the creation of newer and healthy cells. So if you have something that is so important, and it, again, 10% of your body weight, don't you think it's important that we keep it healthy? So again, what are your options? Well, our product is our NRF1 activator has been clinically proven to boost that NRF1 pathway, and that NRF1 pathway is the pathway by which your cells go into what's called mitochondrial biogenesis, which is the creation of newer and healthier mitochondria. Okay, so the next theory of aging is a theory of sirtuins. Your sirtuins are an enzyme or a protein. Again, it also exists inside of your cells. Now, when your cells, as you get older, those sirtuins start to drop off. And so that creates, again, it makes your cells weaker and it makes them more susceptible to a lot of the environmental toxins that you're exposed to every single day. So our NAD synergizer activates your NAD as well as your sirtuins. Now, there's different ways that you can do that. One is our competitors will boost your NAD by an average of 2%. CR stands for calorie restriction. So you could boost your NAD by going basically into starvation mode, living off of 800 calories per day. And you will boost your sirtuins by 94% based on all the research. But that's not really a very realistic goal, is to live off of 800 calories. I don't know about you, but I couldn't do it. But our product is clinically proven to boost the NAD by 100% in 24 hours. And when you combine the NRF1, NRF2, and the NAD, all types of good things start to happen. So if you look at this right here, the NRF2 gene, the HMOX1, which helps to control the inflammatory process, Protandim by itself activates it by 51%. But together with the trisynergizer, it boosts it 848%. That's a 1,563% increase. If you look over here, look at this, 967% increase. The trifecta of all of these three products working together is absolutely amazing. And it's something that's called cellular activation, and I won't get into the science, otherwise we'll be here all night with that. Now, I love the fact that the company has created a lot of other NRF2 activated products. So for example, this is the Axio, which at first it was marketed as a healthy energy drink, but we now know that it is so much more than that. This is liquid brain food, an energy NRF2 activator for the brain. So if you look at the handwriting here of this particular child, this is the nephew of Dr. Brett Brimhall, who's a physician in Phoenix. He wasn't diagnosed with anything. He was just having a lot of issues paying attention. So look at the difference before and then 2 weeks afterwards. It's been amazing. And this has been one of the main products that I gave Seth, and I believe it's made all the difference in the world. I recently did an entire hour-long presentation with my good friend Brenda Geary, where I broke down the ingredients, a lot of the ingredients in different products, especially in Axio, and why it's so powerful for brain health. Now, our company also has a really good probiotic. I know a lot of people take a probiotic, and here's the problem with most, I used to take a probiotic, and here's the problem with most of the probiotics, is that they're not timed release. So by the time they get to your stomach, they dissolve with the stomach acids, and the stomach acids kill off most of these of the probiotics. So it doesn't really get to your lower intestines where you need it. Well, ours is different because we have a BioHACK technology. It is a registered trademark, and it is patented so that the little spheres of the probiotics make it more of those, make it down into your lower intestines where you actually need them. So it's much healthier and much better for your gut. And the company's also created a lot of other different NRF2 products. We have, based on that LSU study, remember I talked about the LSU study with in conjunction with the Skin Cancer Foundation? Well, at their recommendation, they came out with an NRF2 activated skincare line. I mean, look at the difference in this woman's face. I also know that there's several surgeons who are using this because of the wound healing properties. You also have the world's first NRF2 activated hair care system. Amazing results. Our good friend Jessica Bustamante Soto, she was a stage 4 cancer survivor and started using the hair care system, and they told her that she was going to have permanent hair loss. If you look at her picture now, you would have never, ever guessed it. From permanent hair loss to having a really nice, decent head of hair, and it's still getting better. So here we have what we call a kind of a weight management system. It's got a prebiotic. Prebiotics are really important for your gut, sort of the fertilizer so that your body can create better and healthier probiotics. Then, of course, we have NRF2 for our four-legged friends. You know, I love the fact that that they did that because, you know, with dogs, there's no placebo effect. They either feel better or they don't. And there's some really great testimonials on YouTube on some of these pets that have been pre-biohacked and then biohacked with Pet Tandem. All right, so people often ask me, where are these products available? Can I get them through GNC or CVS? And the answer is that they used to be. Shortly after that ABC primetime report aired, the company started selling their products through GNC. But if you've ever been to GNC, then you know that when you get to GNC, there's products wall to wall. And typically the clerk, whether it's GNC, I'm not picking on GNC, or CVS or any of these places, the clerks typically aren't able to explain the benefits of all the products. Certainly not like I did here today. So the products sat on the shelves and an average sales of less than 1 bottle per store per month. Meanwhile, you have all of these studies coming back and saying that NRF2 does all of these amazing things inside of the body, including that Washington State University study that says that this may become the most powerful therapeutic and most powerful preventative breakthrough in the history of medicine, that NRF2 pathway, right? So LifeVantage was faced with a dilemma: how to get their product out to the people, and also how to share the research behind it. So the company had a meeting. They invited a lot of their administrators, and they decided that this was a product whose story needed to be told, not through some 10-second TV commercial, but by the very people who had experienced the great results of the product, people just like you and I. So they took it off and they developed a network of distributors like myself. Now I want you to think about this. My son Seth doesn't have to be in special ed anymore. This did for him, I believe, because there's nothing else that we did differently, that this did for him in 16 weeks or less what 8 years of therapy couldn't do. So do you think maybe a few people have noticed? Yeah, absolutely. In fact, his teachers have noticed, and several of his teachers have also become customers, and a couple of them have become their own distributors as well. What about Anna Cox and the walker, or Lori Miranda with her son who couldn't talk? Anna doesn't need a walker anymore, and Lori's son is talking. So do you think maybe a few people have noticed that? Of course they have. Do you think maybe they have shared what they found? Of course they have. That's what humans do. We share things that we're excited about. So With LifeVantage, when you do that, well, the company will reroute a lot of those advertising dollars, and it will pay you a portion of the proceeds. So for example, if you are a Pro 3, now I want to remind you of something. We are a publicly traded company, so all of these numbers are scrutinized by the SEC, the Security and Exchange Commission. So all of our numbers are accurate. When you are a Pro 3, which means you've got about $5,000 a month in volume moving through your business with you and your clients, you're going to make about $636 per month. Now, that may not seem like a big deal, but think about in the climate that we have today. What if you, in a year's time, were making you're making $600 per month? Over a year's time, that's over $7,000 per month additional income. And as one guy put it, you know, he'd have to work a lot of overtime just to make $600, an extra $600. And of course now, you know, a lot of people are getting laid off. So how could that benefit them? Now here's the difference. This is what we're talking about, leveraged income. The way that works is you have shown your clients how they can order their own product. And then next month, guess what happens? They already know how to order their product, so you don't have to go back and show them again. They order their product, and every month they're ordering their product based on their health needs, right? And then every month, because you showed them one time, whether it was a month ago or 5 months ago or 6 months ago, every month that they're placing their order, LifeVantage sends you a portion of those proceeds. So we're talking about leveraged income as opposed to linear income, which is what you have when you have a job where you go to work and get paid, but if you don't go to work, you don't get paid. Now, if you're a Pro 5 in the business, your average income is about $2,900 a month. Diane and I were able to accomplish this in about 6 months. Now, the money's great, but more than that is the ability to impact people's lives, like Lori Miranda and her son, like Anna Cox, like my son, and the other 600 plus clients that we've been able to affect over the last couple of years. Now, some of you are a little bit more ambitious, a little bit more business savvy, and you're looking at these elite ranks, right? Pro 7, Pro 8, Pro 9. And there's some other incomes that go along once you get to those elite ranks, and particularly the 4% elite bonus pool, which pays you out 4%. It's distributed amongst all the elite ranks, 4% of the total global commission sales. All right? Now, to qualify for those commissions, it's really simple. There's 3 different packages to choose from. LifeVantage makes it very simple. Again, I'm not going to go into details on that. Just get back with the person who invited you and figure out which one best suits your long-term goals. All right. Now, people often ask me, why did Diane and I choose LifeVantage, especially after we had been approached, as I mentioned at the beginning of this workshop, we've been approached by dozens and dozens of different companies. Why did we decide that LifeVantage was different? Well, plainly put, Diane and I believe that making a living, helping people is a great way to live. But I also understand that there's some criteria that makes a company viable. And one of them is a product or a service. So one of the things that we liked about LifeVantage was that they have award-winning, triple patented and category creating products. So you have a level of exclusivity, and our patents are good for the next 20 years. So for the next 20 years, basically you have no real competition. Okay, the only competition is you. So that was really intriguing for us. The next thing is timing. Timing is very important in any business, and let me explain why. If I was here talking about cell phone technology, and I was here talking about, remember these old cell phones, the ones that you had to plug into your car, well, nobody would be very interested in those. What about new cell phones? Is that really where things are at nowadays? Well, of course they are. And think about this. Both of them make wireless communication possible, but the new technology has basically made the old way of doing things obsolete. So another way to describe it is if I go into the Everett Rogers innovation adoption curve, and I'm going to use again cell phone technology as an example, and then I'll bring it back to how that relates to LifeVantage and our products. So back when the iPhone 1 or when cell phone technology or smartphone technology first came out, no one really knew about it, and most people didn't know how to utilize apps. But by the time the iPhone 4 came out, Apple and Samsung and all of these companies, their profits really started to take off because it just took people a few years to really get accustomed to this new smartphone technology. And of course, nowadays, everybody has or utilizes some sort of smartphone technology. Well, the way that applies to LiveVantage is that what we have our hands on is a baby apple. We started off 10 years ago as a small $2 million company. And now the company is doing well over $228 million. It is strategically placed in the same place as the iPhone 4 when smartphone technology really started taking off. So the question is, in the next few years, when LiveVantage hits it becomes a $1 billion company, where do you want to be positioned? All right. And as I mentioned before, LiveVantage is a publicly traded company. Back in January, we were invited, a very high honor, to do what's called a ringing of the bell. So as you can see, LiveVantage is a big, big deal. All right. Now, all of that is great, but what was most important to me is what kind of a support system did I have? Who was involved with this? So I'm just going to go through this just real quickly. These are just some of the people who have been the biggest impact on our life. First and foremost, if you look here, this is here in the peach top. This is Carrie Williams, and down here is Patsy Caulfield. These two ladies, along with Dr. Rodarte, Dr. Rodarte is the top internal medicine physician in Phoenix. Those three were the ones who first shared with us the LiveVantage opportunity and really got us very, very excited. Let's see here. Patsy is right at about Pro 5. Melody Rodarte is Pro 6. Carrie Williams is a Pro 9 in the business, about to go Pro 10. Over here is, this is Carrie Williams' next door neighbor, Maria Williams. She's also a Pro 9 in the business. Over here is Dr. Brett Brimhall. He's one of the top physicians, also in Phoenix. He's a Pro 7 in the business. And then over here are good friends, Randy and Brenda Gary. They are Pro 6s in the business. So I really like the fact that these guys were all real people with real backgrounds. Some of them were medical, some of them were not. Patsy, I believe, was a teacher, a preschool teacher. Carrie was a manager for Bath and Body Works. You'll never find a group of people who are more caring and more giving than this group right here. So that concludes our BIOHACK workshop for today. And I want to encourage you, get back with the person who invited you, ask them a ton of questions. It's what I did. It won't bother them, I promise you. Let them know what your interest level is. If it's a 0, that's great. No one will bother you. That's fine. It's your body. It's your finances. You make your own decisions. Maybe it's a 1. You just want to be a customer. Great. We'll help you how to do that. But if you're interested in developing your own biohack enterprise, again, get back with the person who invited you. Let them know what your interest level is, and we'll be more than happy to put together a game plan that will help you achieve your goals. All right, guys, that concludes our workshop for today. Love you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Y'all have a good evening.
Thank you.